Hello, cats and kittens, Oliver Jose, and welcome back to the Manga Corner. And I'm here to give my impressions on One Piece Chapter 1033, Shimazuki Kozaburo. Right off the bat, the first thing I love about this chapter is it's all fight. I've been waiting for these fights for a minute. The setup seems to be over. Whether or not this is leading to the conclusion of the King Zoro fight, I'm not sure, but it's all fight. A little bit of exposition, well, a good amount of exposition, but mainly it's concerning their fight. So it's basically, and I got questions. I'm not even going to say concerns, but I got questions on some things. First of all, going into the beginning of the fight, you see Zoro still struggling to tame Emna. And he makes a statement right off the first page: who gave you permission to unleash your power? You know, my first question is, and there might be some, well, I don't know. He says, who gave you permission to unleash your power? So is that to say that Emna is unleashing is Emna unleashing Zoro's haki, or is Emna unleashing its own power? I mean, it's probably an easy answer to that, but the little details you might get hung up on, because I'll get into that in a minute. So he's struggling still to maintain some measure of control over Emna. He goes in and attacks King, who has been very laid back through this whole thing, and he's laid back through the majority of this fight. It's going to probably be to his own detriment in the end, but he really should have struck while the iron was hot. But Zoro stabs him in the gut, and for some reason he explodes, which is tied to his abilities and his past. As we pick up on the little exposition drop between Queen and Sanji, where Queen keeps hyping up his partner, because apparently this is right after Sanji had asked Zoro to kill him if Sanji is not himself after his fight with Queen, but that's a separate issue. We'll get to that in a minute in another video, but whatever. So Queen drops the exposition that King is undefeatable. He's from a race that can survive any natural environment. And I suppose that's going to come into play at some point. The environment itself, or I don't know if it's the environment itself or particular forces is directed against King. I don't know. But he can survive anything, I guess. Even being stabbed in the gut. And he is descendant of a race that has been Lunarians who are extinct currently. The remnant of the extinct Lunarians, the monsters that are capable of surviving in the environment. And then Sanji asked the question, well, how did they die out? Were they killed off or whatever? Queen basically says you have to ask the history books. So this is information that's going to be revealed at some point. When, I don't know. We'll see. But we go back to the battle. And the only reason that Zoro survived this explosion was because he threw up his haki to protect himself. Now, Zoro says he blew himself up, but he's still basically, he admitted an explosion. I can't say he blew himself up because he still got all his clothes on and he still has a body. Even if he was to be able to blow himself up and reconfigure, could he reconfigure his own clothes? I don't know. Zoro goes in with his lion song, attacks him to no effect. Now, King goes back to his stretch thing where he stretches his head and fires his attack, cuts Zoro. The battle, it's a pitch battle at this point, but it comes to the point where his what does he call it? He calls it his imperial deep pride, or whatever you want to call it. He knocks Zoro basically back. He's falling off the side of the island, or at least he's falling away. He's getting blown away, and he drops his sword. That's when we get into the bulk of the exposition. Um, the history. Zoro's basically piecing together information late. I mean, we know that he's not the most, not gonna say he's stupid, but he's not the sharpest of the straw hats in terms of, you know, putting things together, but he is putting it together because it's relevant to his current fight. Sanji or, Usopp probably would have figured this stuff out quicker, but, as he goes through the fight, he's realizing the history of his swords. The thing that's interesting here to me is not necessarily the makers of the swords, but the swords themselves. Because as we go through this and we jump from past to present, King is still attacking Zoro as he grabs each of the swords. We find out that the swords themselves are created to deal death, which makes sense to me. As nothing that Kozaburo, or whatever his name is, says to me is off. None of that stuff is off. A sword is an instrument of death. Yes, you can use it to protect people and all that stuff, but in the end, a sharp instrument that you slash at people with is usually meant to kill. So he says that when people look at swords as being cursed, it's not that the swords are cursed, it's just that they're very effective. It's weak people looking at swords and saying that they're cursed, when in fact, they're not cursed at all. They just have the personality or the intention to kill, to maim. And the better they are at it, the more people fear them. Which to me is fair. I mean, that's, you ain't playing chess. You're playing, this ain't even a game. If you take up a sword, you likely want to kill somebody. You don't have to, but the most likely thing is that you're going to kill them. Because Burrow says, listen closely. A sword is like a kitchen knife, but for murder. They're created to kill people. A blacksmith hones his craft so that his weapons are better at killing than others. The sword has its own personality. A swordsman must master it and bend it to his will. Now, here's where it gets interesting to me, because it almost sounds like we're starting to talk about Bleach. Like we're starting to talk about zanpakutos. You know what I mean? Although, in One Piece, swords don't have necessarily weird powers like, they cut. Some cut better than others, but they don't do weird things and manifest images, not images necessarily, but they don't act like zanpakutos and Bleach. But you're kind of getting into that territory when you say that they have personalities and that they choose their owners and they choose this and they choose that. So that part is a little, I'm not a huge fan of that word. So Zoro puts together basically that that Shimasugi Kozaburo was from Wano. He defected, left, settled. Basically, his village is named that Zoro's village is named after him. So he founded the village or whatever. I mean, I'm not deeply caught up in that, but the main thing is he understands. He's getting to understand the nature of Emma and why it's trying to suck all of his hockey out, because it's chose him and it's testing him to see if he's fit to wield it. Now he has to tame it. He has to bend it to his will. So how does he do that? ultimately he gives Emna what it's asking for, which is, I guess, to test the level of his hockey. His basically the way I read this is Emna knows that he has Conqueror's hockey, which I'm still not convinced that Zoro does, and it's trying to draw that out because that's what it's used to. I'm probably wrong. I'm so it wants to cut with Conqueror's hockey, and this is a life and death battle, and it's like let's go. And he's up here thinking that he needed to regulate it when he finally comes to the idea that hey, let me just let it go and cut loose, and if I die, I die. It's supposed to kill anyway. And by the time he lets loose his Conqueror's hockey, I'm telling you that man still doesn't know he has Conqueror's hockey because King asked him when he releases it. You can see the lightning, black lightning coming off. Now this looks like it's not just regular Conqueror's hockey, although it's knocking out fodder, which Conqueror's hockey does. But it's letting loose like lightning. It looks like black lightning, so that might be advanced Conqueror's hockey, which is crazy because I'm not convinced that he even knows he has Conqueror's hockey. He asked him, "So you intend to be a king then?" This is King speaking to Zoro. And he says, what? He's not looking at the fodder and the fact that they passed out. That's irrelevant to Zoro right now. He's focusing on King. And he's focusing on the fact that he promised Luffy that he was going to be the greatest swordsman ever. So he says, I guess that's what I think Zoro's thinking king of the swords. So he says, yeah, that's right. I've got to keep a promise to my captain and my best friend. Now you can argue whether or not he's talking about Kuina and Luffy or just Luffy, period. But we know he's talking about he got to keep that promise to Luffy because he told him he was going to be the greatest. I mean, the panel right before it, he's talking about he was going to be the world's greatest swordsman. And that's what the Pirate King needed. So he's talking about Luffy. His best friend, is Luffy his best friend? But I mean, and the rest of them, people that he grew up with, either long departed or if you're talking about Queen, she's dead. So presently, I would say yes. But I can see that either way. Anyway, so the fight's going to continue. One thing I like, we're getting old school Zoro fights where he's getting bloodied up. I mean, I won't go back to that Zoro versus Mr. One or whatever back at Alabasta, man, drenched in blood and all that good stuff. That's what I'm looking for. Interesting chapter. It's an interesting chapter. I like it. I mean, it's action heavy. And the whole thing here, my whole issue is with swords. Are we saying the swords are living things? Are they just things that have personality? Are we talking about literally? Or are we talking about figuratively? Are they zanpakutos? Or are they just swords? I can go a little way with that, but if we start talking about swords being alive now, that's weird. That's weird for One Piece. That's weird. But I do like the explanation that people think that swords are cursed because they're effective at killing. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I really like that. I like the way that's broken down. So yeah, great chapter. I can't wait to. I'm assuming that we can probably go over to Sanji and then back to Zoro. There might be some kind of split up, but I'm just looking forward to the next one. So until then, let me know what you think about what are swords in One Piece. They're not living things, but the way they're spoken of as being alive, it's just kind of it's getting a little weird to me, but I still love it. I mean, I enjoy it. So let me know what you think. Until then, till next time, stay loose.